And welcome to the Country Telegraph. It's a Wednesday, and nice to have your company too on the Gold Coast. It's absolutely magnificent, to say the least. Before we get into our first guest, Trevor Hold, let's have a look at some of the brief headlines from around Australia for regional, rural and outback Australia. The New South Wales Farmers Association has not confirmed if it will end its membership of the National Farmers Federation ahead of a pending exit deadline this month. So we shall wait and see. Australia's largest agribusiness, A2 Milk, has agreed to pay investors $62 million to settle a class action over alleged misleading conduct without admitting liability. Weather-wise, a strong cold front will hit southeastern Australia from Thursday, bringing severe thunderstorms, strong wind gust and unusually wintry conditions. That's where the footy is for this weekend in Adelaide, and boy oh boy, they'll get it smack bang right in the forehead. Now 10 million people finally can, no not finally, but 10 million people now call regional Australia home, and Western Australia is leading the way with its regional population growing faster than the cities, according to the latest statistics released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And finally, Greater Shepparton City Council is reminding those farmers to protect paddock trees and native vegetation while burning stubble this season. Paddock trees benefit both farmers and the environment by improving soil health, controlling erosion, sheltering stock, and providing a habitat for native wildlife that feed on pest and also pollinate crops. Coming up next, Trevor Hold here on the Country Telegraph. Trevor Hold is the publisher of the Australian Advocate. As an Ultrapreneaur, Trevor is involved in several business ventures ranging through farming and agriculture, counselling and mental health empowerment and advocacy services. One of the many articles in the Australian Advocate, which is out now, is about the fertiliser crisis. As with energy, we really should be questioning what has become the status quo and create change. Now, isn't it funny how the big voices in government and big business have promoted resilience and sustainability, but their policies have created the very opposite? Trevor Hold, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's great to be here on after a refreshing long weekend. Hopefully you enjoyed your weekend and you're ready to tackle another week this week.
I did. Isn't it awful though? I didn't want to come back. I mean, I wanted to come back, and I'm thinking, wow, I actually like to sleep in. How was your Easter, by the way? Did the Easter Bunny bring you any Easter eggs?
Yeah, I had my fair share of Easter eggs and back into the diet and exercise starting yesterday. So I had a bit of a 4-day break, and hopefully everyone can enjoy a little bit of extra festivities over the long period, but get back into it. Get into the groove starting now.
Now, isn't it interesting when you have an article that explores how food scarcity really hasn't come into people's equations? You know, they pop down to the supermarket. That's where the fruit and veggie, they're all grown there, of course, if you didn't know that. Just add water to the meat and there you are, it's all waiting for you. So they really haven't thought much about it. That's about to probably go headlong into a brick wall, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very concerning time for everyone, I suppose, and the current circumstance that Australia finds itself in nationally is hopefully a big eye-opener to people on how dependent Australia has become on foreign interference, I suppose you call it, because without the oil supply or without diesel or petrol, then at the moment Australia is very vulnerable. And obviously, like you mentioned, the fertiliser supply and a lot of these things aren't done in Australia. Our industries have been declining for decades, and our ability to be able to do stuff on shores has basically diminished. So it is a very interesting time that we find ourselves, Mike, and hopefully we can rectify that situation, enlightened by the troubles that we find ourselves in.
How do we get to this point? That's what because I mean, we have an education system. I know it does fail on many fronts, but at least they are sort of intelligent. And then we have the lack of food, which it is going to be. If you walk into the supermarket, you'll see you get less for more. And boy, do we have a deal for you. One lettuce leaf is only $58,000 trillion. But people say they understand that bit, but they don't understand that that eventually, unless we have fuel, unless we have better government policy, what you would have paid for that lettuce leaf would be way in the past, and whether you can get that lettuce leaf, because you're going to have a great deal of scarcity when it comes to produce.
Yeah, I don't know, like from my personal perspective as a young man, I done an apprenticeship, and I was promoted, and there was promotions on TV, learn CNC machining, computer numerical control machining and robotronics, and learn how to code and do all these automation things, and that's what my trade was, and we tried to set that up here in Australia many years ago, and there's been a lot of people that have done that, like in regards to like brake drums, tilt train axle boxes, and all sorts of products that can be mass produced. But the biggest problem in Australia is obviously you got your liability and your workers' compensation and your occupational health and safety regulations, which for example China doesn't have anywhere near as many bureaucratic red tape scenarios as Australia does, but also labour in Australia is quite expensive. So we were sold a dream to learn all these things, learn how to code and learn how to program, and you'll have a job for life. But these things aren't done in Australia anymore because we're not able to be competitive because of this free trade environment. So even though we're being penalised with additional, and rightfully so, with additional, occupational health and safety requirements and all these safety things, but also all these liabilities and insurance costs that other countries don't facilitate, then and it costs us more in labour and all that sort of stuff. But and now when we're importing all this stuff with the free trade agreement, then suddenly all these things that these other countries can do a lot cheaper than us because they haven't got the regulation, they don't have the safety requirements, and they don't have the labour costs that Australia got, then that dream of learning how to code and how to make stuff automatically is all offshore. So and that's one of the biggest problems we got, because you stop making things in Australia, like even fundamental things like steel and all the main things, and suddenly you're very dependent on the import of these things, and when there's problems with the supply chain like we see now just with oil, then the whole system can collapse.
They really have been drinking the Kool-Aid, the general population, when it comes to climate change. I mean, the propaganda or the information overload and the information operation, in fact, from the particular governments, whether it's state, local, state, or federal, seems to be working very well indeed, because they don't understand that this terrible thing called oil, it's in just about everything we use, and you take that oil away, and you eventually just grind down, don't you?
Yeah, and it's a lot of the knock-on effects as well. Like energy costs, for example, that's another factor that we've got. A big burden on individual businesses and even householders. The cost of that compared to other countries, when it comes to manufacturing, then that is a big burden. But also the primary production of things are also affected by that as well, because obviously we need to build stuff to be competitive and be able to create affordable agricultural products or primary producing products, and that all requires time and energy and innovation as well. So to be competitive on that regard, so innovation should be a number one priority, and Australia should be known as an innovation capital of the world. But having that sole focus on net zero is, I suppose, blinding or blinkering people to other potential industries or other potential avenues to create innovation around these things.
Totally agree with you. The fertiliser. Let's talk fertiliser. I mean, if you're in Nauru, you should be able to grow giant carrots. The whole place it's just bird poop. And that's not being terribly nasty, but it's the fertiliser capital of the world. But if you look at Australia, without that fertiliser, things don't grow very well, don't grow much of it. In fact, some farmers would say, no fertiliser, we don't do any work. Tell us about fertiliser, and in particular, the synthetic fertiliser.
Yeah, and there's a big dependence, like you mentioned, in farming, especially like the massive broad scale acreage farming, and a lot of these things with the fertiliser, and the problem that I suppose occurs is you get reliance on, it's not just fertiliser but also the pesticides, and creates the demand for more fertiliser, and you get stuck in this perpetual loop of more pesticides, more fertiliser, and the soil health is declining over time. And obviously, the bicentenary was 1988 in Australia, so we've been here, for what's that, nearly 250 years or whatever. And over that time, you can see these broad acre operations exponentially increase these synthetic chemicals into the soil. And obviously now, without these synthetic approaches, the soil is not capable of producing in a lot of areas. So I feel it's a perpetual loop that we find ourselves stuck into, and it's just trying to find alternative ways to be able to manage this stuff a lot more naturally as intended by nature. So it's not about not producing bulk food, it's just about adapting to more sustainable and more independent sustainable methods.
Yeah, we're very dependent on, aren't we? Without fertiliser, we sort of stop just about. What alternatives are there? I mean, if we just say, for example, if it keeps going the way it is and you can't get your fertiliser in, what alternatives? What about? I mean, we've had a gentleman on talking about his fertiliser, and it's more natural and works better, but it's not that easy, is it?
No, well, I think that's the problem with where we're at in Australia at the moment. As a Ultrapreneaur, it's obviously funding to get things off the ground, and it's not good enough or not enough in this country to have an idea. Back in the day, back in the 80s or even earlier, back in my grandfather's day, for people to go into business, they just tapped the sign in the ground and said, we're open for business. But now there's so much capital required and so much red tape required to be able to get into business with permits and council approvals and all this other stuff. It's very difficult. So, for example, if you wanted to start for example, a worm farm, you'd have to, there's a lot of equipment that you'd have to do it on a mass scale. And, the capital investment to do that is quite significant, but also the time it takes to get through the approval process and the cost of that approval process is enough to stifle any projects, you know what I mean? So I feel that in order to be able to support these innovations, we've got to have a system in place that allows people to progress forward, and then instead of trying to recover any money up front that individuals like me or whoever's trying to do the project have to come up with up front, and then if you fail, you lose your investment. You're better off supporting that project and getting off the ground and try and recover the money from the taxes or whatever on a successful venture, rather than trying to stifle it at the very start,
And I agree with you there too. I think things have become quite complicated. I'm just thinking about those worms. and you've had experience with government of fire ants. I mean, those worms, they're like the anaconda. You don't want those worms escaping, do you? Because could you imagine a stampede of worms? It would,
Yeah, yeah.
but without being too frivolous, I would imagine the government's very concerned about worm farms. And is it because of health and safety, or is it because it's alternative?
I feel it's about control. I feel that having independent people come up with independent solutions that are sustainable stop these big corporations from getting their chemical solutions out there. And I feel that's what it is. So I believe in commercial solutions simply because they create a competitive environment where cost-effective, fit-for-purpose and customer-focused solutions are created. So without supporting commercial business to be independent and competitive, then I feel that the bureaucrats can help their mates out more and have control over the whole industries, which is quite concerning. And a good example of that is the transport industry with independent truck drivers. It used to be a lot easier now to register a truck and be an independent driver for yourself. But now, for example, one example is registration of environmentally relevant activities for your trailer. It costs you the same amount of money if you got one trailer or 5 trailers to pay for that permit. But then when you get 20 trailers, the cost per trailer is significantly lower. So a person driving one owner driver truck cannot compete with the Lindsay Foxes of the world that have lots of trucks, and then that enables them to buy, for example, pay for extra hours for their road fatigue management plans and develop all these other things as well that the single independent operator can't afford. So it's across every industry and across every sector. And I know we're talking about fertiliser and we're talking about this, but that's what it's the same sort of issue. Doesn't matter what industry you're talking about. Is there's no diversity on there, and government policy is specifically focusing on getting the big guy going, and making it so you have to go and work through that system because they can control the tax a lot easier. They can control all the bureaucracy that easy because them guys are cooperating because it's a multi-million-dollar business for them. But the individual operators and the independent, small business and independent operators are being flushed out of the system, and I feel that's losing a lot of innovation and losing a lot of core competitive behaviour in across all industries.
Just your own personal opinion. Do you think I'll tell you mine in a second. When you pop into a supermarket and they've got all the, not a whole lot by the way, but the fruit and veg on one shelf, and then they have the genuine organic section. First of all, do you think it's any better for you, the genuine organic section? Because at my supermarket on the Gold Coast, it looks very sad. It looks like it was once fresh, until they picked it up off the floor, because it looks terrible. I mean, it looks terrible. They're wilted, and then I look at the other fruit and veg, which looks pretty sad too, but not as sad. But so, what's your views on the organic? The stuff that's been no chemicals, no whatever, hasn't been touched by any human being, or do you think the other stuff that's just pumped out full of, they got everything on it because it looks better, the organic stuff? Truly, it looks like our garden. It's terrible.
Yeah, and there's a few points I want to touch on that.
Yep.
Organic farming is, especially domestic stuff in Australia, is at risk of losing its credibility at all in this country because the government under different programs are able to ignore or disregard domestic organic producers, and that's quite a sad situation for everyone. So the ACCC recognises that any domestic operator can make an organic claim, for long as if they have the evidence to back that up. And there is a standard, Australian standard, licensed through Standards Australia, AS 6000, that actually has a framework where people can do that. But government departments are ignoring that framework and ignoring that standard and actually walking over people's rights and distributing toxic chemicals or genetically modified derivatives of genetically modified organisms, GMOs, and just failing to recognise domestic land management and organic producers. So it's actually a quite sad situation in that regard. So there's a twofold scenario where DAF, the Federal Department of Agriculture and Fisheries and Forestry, they have their own export standard for export overseas. But when we talk about, as you know, I've been involved in the National Fire Ant Eradication Program, they've actually misrepresented their use of organic certified or organic compliant products that they've been distributed for fire ants, mainly the product Engage. For 25 years, they lied to the public saying that was an organic product, when in fact it did have GMO derivatives inside of it. And they've been spraying this stuff everywhere, all over paddocks and all over properties, and forcing it on organic properties, saying that it is organic. And then in August last year, they come out and said, "Oh, hang on a minute, it's got GMO derivatives in it," because the legislator for GMOs does not require GMO derivatives to be declared in any shape, way or form. So in Australia, there's no necessary requirement to declare the use of GMO derivative products in produce or anywhere, and that really does compromise the whole organic industry. So this is a very serious issue that's just been ignored throughout the whole of Australia and all the governing authorities, and I feel it needs addressed pretty quickly, because these things are non-compliant with organic operations, and yet the government have been lying and distributing them all over the place. And when they do come clean with it, they only recognise properties that are accredited to the export certification. When they're not exporting anything, there's no requirement for them to be accredited, which costs them thousands of dollars to be accredited to that standard. So that, and they've got no need to if they're doing it domestically. But then operational procedures in these programs are just ignoring domestic markets. So it's a really concerning situation at the moment with the organic producers and land managers. So I really am focused on trying to create some resolve on that matter. But when it comes to organic stuff looking a little bit terrible or seeding, I feel that we're a little bit precious, that it's got to be perfect. I know there's a lot of waste at Coles and Woolworths because they've got a no and no go, they call them go and no go gauges, and the lettuce has to go through this gauge and not go through this gauge, and then if it doesn't fit that dimensional criteria, then they throw it in the bin and literally goes to waste. So I feel organic produce, it's disappointing that we have to go through a lot of standards to say it's an organic produce, but we should just call it an apple instead of calling it an organic apple. And ones that are poisoned, why don't we say, oh, that's the poisoned apple, So I feel that might make a little bit difference and a little bit more reflective on it. So instead of saying it's an organic apple, how about we just say it's an apple? And how about if we use poison on it, let's call it a poisoned apple and see how that promotion goes for them, But it doesn't work that way, which is very, very, very unfortunate.
You can't tell the truth. But speaking of apples, I saw some apples in the organic area, and I wasn't sure if they were prunes. Even we bought some the other day, and they weren't too bad. But the Brussels sprouts or Brussels gouts, they were $1.48 at our local supermarket. And the organic ones, of course. But the end of them, you looked at the end, you thought, is that a living, breathing animal there? It was it looked pretty bad, but it tasted all right. We bought it because it was cheap. But it's the organic section of the supermarkets, Woolies and Coles, they're appalling. They are truly, truly bad. Oranges. Look how spongy the orange is.
But that's why I recommend going to the farmer themselves. Get to know your local producer and go direct through them, and you'll get the best quality food. It will look very good, and
it's healthy too.
And it's healthy. So just in my regard, because it's not just about being organic or non-organic as well. It's also methods of ripening. There are, for example, we got bananas, and our bananas are tree ripened, and a tree ripened banana is gonna taste a lot more sweeter than what they do is normally cut them green and keep them in a chilled environment or whatever. When they're ready for sale, they gas them or whatever, and to ripen them up, and that's pretty standard practice for a lot of the Cavendish bananas across the country. But having tree ripened plants, and you just be patient. Whenever they're in season, and when they're green, and what we do is we turn our green bananas, for example, that might blow down in the wind or whatever, into flour. So we make our own banana flour, and we chuck them through chuck them through a grinder, and that after we dehydrate them and turn them into flour. And then if they're ripened too quickly or too much before sale, then we chuck them in the dehydrator to make what's called banana buttons, which are just dried banana jerky basically, and they're beautiful products. But people that just buy bananas from the bulk suppliers don't really know what a banana tastes like, because they are quite flavoursome, So, but yeah, so there are different issues as well in regards to that.
Yeah, nothing like a good banana. I got to tell you, we had some bananas a few weeks ago. They were magnificent, and actually they were Cavendish too, which are pretty damn nice. But at our house, what happens is that if the banana looks a bit sad, look, oh, it's going to pass away tomorrow, it becomes a smoothie.
Yeah.
And but I don't drink it. It's far too healthy for me. Let's talk about, because you're well known because of your ant stories. I mean, those pesky ants. But the stuff they're spraying on the ants at the moment, that weapon of controlling the ants, bee farmers aren't all that happy with it, are they?
Yeah, it's quite disturbing, especially. Obviously, I've been focused on the fire ants in the southeast Queensland portion, and they're using chemicals like S-methoprene and pyriproxyfen. And what they use is like a corn grit, and it's a genetically modified corn grit that actually takes the starch out of it, so it becomes more absorbent with the genetically modified soya oil, which is actually genetically modified so it can suspend the active ingredient in it. And it's either pyriproxyfen or S-methoprene in the area that we're using on is what they're using prophylactically. But there are some in the yellow crazy ants where they're actually using fipronil. And fipronil is a known PFAS chemical as per the Australian definition of what a PFAS is. And it's actually on the Australian chemical map as being a PFAS chemical. And they're dropping this stuff out of the back of helicopters on a broad scale to prophylactically treat for crazy yellow ants. So very similar to what's going on here. But what happens is these things do get into waterways. They do mass damage. They are impacting the soil health and are impacting worms or other things in the soil. But having it as a PFAS chemical, which is a cancer-causing chemical to humans, dropped out of the back of helicopters they're not even controlling yellow ants, they're spreading, similar to the fire ants scenario. But regardless on what the chemical is, these pollinators, the programs say that they can't pick it up because they got like a straw nose and they can't eat the corn grit. But what happens is the oil does separate from the corn grit, and it can either end up in the in a water or a puddle of water or whatever where bees can drink, or when they drop it out of the helicopters, there could be open flowers there, and the corn grit could land in the flowers, or the product could land in the flowers, and then it can separate from the corn grit and leach into the nectar and kill off whole hives that way. And that's the concerning thing about some of this science that they use and some of the statements that they make. They're denying that they use the PFAS chemicals, a known cancer-causing chemical in humans, which is completely and utterly false. Fipronil is a PFAS chemical, is on the PFAS map of Queensland. I've looked into that extensively, but also the fact that it doesn't kill pollinators, where they're just having one scenario, they can't get the active ingredient because they can't pick up the corn grit through their straw-like nose or whatever, but mouth or whatever, but there are circumstances that can evolve beyond their control where it does affect the pollinators. So, but these chemicals are not targeted. They'll affect any animal that comes, any insect that comes in contact with them. And then there's effects of biomagnification and bioaccumulations that occur as they go up through the food chain that can impact us. And there's no research on this, and there's nothing getting done because they get their blinkers on and they find a problem and they try to address that problem, but they don't want to look at the overall picture of it, you know. So it's quite concerning about how that all works. So we've got to keep pressure on and hold these guys accountable for their actions.
Where did they get the name, the Townsville Yellow Crazy Ant Management Program?
Well, they weren't crazy. They weren't crazy. They were just yellow ants, and then they started dropping fipronil on their homes, and that's what made them crazy. Before that, they were just standard yellow ants, I think.
We're in Vietnam. They had Agent Orange. Now we got the whatever stuff they're pumping on those poor ants and poor bees. What's council doing about this? Obviously, if you know this, they obviously know it. Is council, I mean, throughout Australia, are the local councils saying, enough's enough, we have to look after our locals here, or are they going, yeah?
Well, we done an article the other last month, I think it was, about the Gympie Shire Council actually poisoning and affecting a local organic farmer there, and he complained to council about it. And the arrogance of the council workers, they went and done a big patch of public land just out front of his driveway, just to show, look, we got poison, we can do what we want with it, and that's what. And that's what they do. So I've raised a little bit of awareness to my local councils here, but I haven't got very far with them. But it is something that we're pursuing. Obviously, the development of alternatives in regards to our FASO machine, fire ant suppression soup operations for treating fire ants, but also because we can do steam and treat weed with the low flow hot water system as well. Then we want to try and get some research done on the effectiveness of not using poisons, because what they're doing is
We've lost Trevor. He'll come back to us in a second. He actually froze. I mean, see, the council have stopped that internet. Maybe they turned his electricity off. No, he's still frozen. So hopefully he can come back to us in a second as I do. I feel it. No, he's completely frozen right now. See what happens when you eat those bananas, something like that. Trevor Hold there, by the way, the April edition of the Australian Advocate. It's out now. Look for the article to Ingredients for a Perfect Storm, the Fertiliser Crisis. It's all very serious, to say the least. This is the Country Telegraph. Back after a couple of messages. This one is very important.
There's around 17,000 level crossings around Australia, many of these on country roads like the one behind me here. They have no lights or boom gates.
We are saying this needs to change, and we want mandatory legislation introduced to ensure that all trains have safety lighting. This issue affects all Australians, and we know that people that are from metropolitan areas are at greater risk of a crash with a train because they're expecting full controls in place that they're just not going to get in regional areas where these level crossings are protected only by signage.
In Australia, there's strict lighting requirements for trucks, buses, cars, even bicycles. But when it comes to Australia's biggest land vehicle, trains, there are no mandatory standards in place, and this anomaly really needs to be corrected.
When approaching a railway level crossing, especially those without lights or boom gates, drivers must exercise caution and must always check that it is safe to cross. But a driver can't give way to a train they can't see.
The rail industry is very profitable, powerful and protected. We have a unique situation where the Rail Industry Safety and Standards Board is owned and controlled by rail operators. So they have the power to put commercial interests before public safety.
By law, trucks must have marker lights that clearly show their full length, width and height from every angle, day or night. If a truck doesn't meet these lighting rules, it can't legally be on the road. If it's good enough for trucks, it's good enough for trains.
If those changes had been made back then, we would still have our family members today. Instead, we have to watch on while other families go through these completely preventable tragedies. Something as simple, as cheap and affordable as a beacon light could have saved 3 precious, beautiful lives in our particular crash.
Over the years, there's been far too many tragedies at level crossings around Australia. And on behalf of the many families and communities affected, I really do appeal to our government and to industry to support mandatory safety lighting on all trains.
Authorised by Lara Jensen, Mount Magnet.
G'day, Troy Casadale here. I've been travelling around this country playing music for more years than I'd like to remember. I've spent a lot of time on stage, but I reckon I've spent more time on the roads getting to gigs. And honestly, I've seen worse behaviour on the roads than I've seen at any concert of mine, and often from people who have years of experience behind the wheel. It's probably been a while since a lot of us have really thought about our driving, so take a sec and think about what you can do to help keep yourself and others safe on the roads. Us mob are almost 3 times more likely to die in a road crash than the rest of the population. So let's change that. Drive safely. Don't get distracted by the phone or others in the car, or get hot-headed or any of that stuff. You wouldn't do inconsiderate things outside a car, so why do them in one? Don't let a car change who you are. Safer driving starts with you.
What is sunburn? Sunburn is a sign that we've had too much sun. So when we get too much UV on our skin is damaged and the cells become inflamed and they become red. And that's sunburn. Sometimes it can peel, sometimes it can blister even. And it's a sign that our skin cells are damaged. And that damage in time can cause skin cancer.
What fresh produce means to me, it's seasonal. So it's at Christmas time, it's mangoes. In springtime, it's stone fruit. That's what fresh produce means to me.
Fresh food to me means food that doesn't have preservatives and stuff on it.
What are those green things?
It means healthiness, probably, like to me personally.
It means quite a lot to me because I don't want to actually have dirty food.
Health, variety. Well, all food means everything to me.
Fresh food gives me the best food, best in nutrition and usually taste as well.
Something that doesn't come in a package of any sort, that hasn't been processed in any way beyond perhaps cutting it up.
Fresh food means healthier options, crisp flavors.
Apple!
I think food security is when you have access to a lot of food.
I think it's very important.
Just having fruits and vegetables available to us all the time, which is great.
Food security is when we have enough food for everyone.
Well, I think it means having a local source for the food. I think if COVID taught us anything is we need to be self-sufficient and not rely on imports.
Going to the grocery store and knowing that you're going to get everything that you need in one place.
Food security means having food available to everyone in WA as and when they need it, a constant supply.
I've never really thought about that actually.
I would not be happy because a lot of my meals are actually made of fruit and mostly veg actually.
Would you be sad? No, I'll have chocolate.
If we didn't have access to fresh food, we'd probably be a lot more unhealthy.
I think that would be bad. I think we'd have to rely on imports from other places where we maybe wouldn't know what sort of quality we're going to get.
You're either going to have to get it from other sources, so there's going to be price, food miles involved, or you're going to go without.
Personally, I think it'd impact me a lot because I do eat a lot of fruit and vegetables.
Well, I think a lot of businesses would go under.
Fresh food connects us all. Our food system is strong, but not invincible.
Climate, cost of production, and consumer expectations are challenging producers' profitability. Local food production is essential for food security. Food security is economic and lifestyle security.
Research that creates awareness and sparks action results in impact. Innovation is already in the ground and growing. We're investing in smarter, more sustainable ways to grow.
It's public health. It's our shared resilience.
We invest in local food systems, we invest in our future.
On the sunburnt banks of the mighty Murray River, there's a place where time seems to flow a little slower. It's here where the waters glisten with crystal stillness, where nature's chorus invites the liveliest silence, where in those golden hours at the break and close of day, you can spot twice as many suns shimmering in the sky. It was here in 1958 where Wyndham Hill-Smith first discovered Oxford Landing and dreamt of preserving its wonder for years to come. Today, the sixth generation of the Hill-Smith family tends to the land with the same devotion. Committed to sourcing grapes from only estate and family-owned vineyards, community remains at the heart of Oxford Landing. They've got each other's backs. They've got nature's back, driven to leave the land and future generations with as little worries as possible. There's one thing for sure. The glass is always half full at Oxford Landing. The wines here are crafted with care, fostering a hands-off approach that preserves the land's purity. In fact, these wines are all about preservation of the land, the community, and the industry itself. While the land must be preserved, its fruits are to be enjoyed today. They are to be sipped slowly and shared generously, along with cherished company. As you savour the vibrant serenity and fresh flavours of the region, take a moment to put your feet up and let time flow by.
Ten years ago, Aussie Dairy made a promise. A promise to protect our environment. A promise to provide the best care for our animals. A promise to build a healthier Australia. Since then, we've become global leaders in sustainable dairy production. But we won't stop there. We're taking action every day by putting initiatives in place across our entire dairy industry because we promise to protect what matters most.
How do I check my skin? What am I looking for? And what do I do if I see a spot on my skin that I'm worried about? It's really important to check your skin and be aware of what's on your skin. You're the best judge, so you know what's on it and what's new or changing or different. We tell people to check their skin at the change of every season, so about 4 times a year. And make sure you do it systematically. So start at the places you can see and maybe ask a friend or someone at home to check your back, places you can't see. You're looking for things that stand out, that are different to their neighbours, that are growing or changing with time. And sometimes skin cancers will be tender or they'll be bleeding, but not always. So if there's something strange on your skin, make sure you go to your doctor and get it checked.
No matter who you are, you'll find a place to belong here.
Join Lions and help shape a community we're proud to call home.
I don't think I'd be where I would be or where I am now without having moved to Mount Isa.
I guess if you don't get out of your bubble from wherever you live in, you don't know what else is going on around the rest of the world.
The people, the opportunity, the places you can go see, the amount of adventuring you can do around here is just unlimited.
There's community groups for just about everything. We've got most sports covered. It's like-minded people, all encouraging.
Mount Isa is all about community. It's all about building those strong connections within each other.
We went out the other weekend, we got 15, 20 people to come out for a big four-wheel drive. Everyone loved it. The environment that everyone made was just good. Everyone there, everyone having a go.
You've got so much time after work finishes. The sun is up. I know people who put their speedboat in after work and go skiing.
You're able to spend a lot more time doing the things that you love when you're not having to commute so far to work every day.
You get on with everyone, everyone knows everyone, everyone's got mates everywhere. Everyone's willing to help you out too, so you won't get that in the city.
I think you just have to give it a go. You just have to take every opportunity you possibly can and make the most of it.
Yeah, I'm glad I've made the decision I did. Something about the town just brings you back.
Experience of what it is like to be out here and get away from the hustle and bustle and the amazing natural beauty we have to offer out here and the fantastic people. If you're lucky, you might stay for 20 odd years.
Matt Webster, and farming in at Hopetoun in the Mallee. Our farm is approximately somewhere between 3,500 to 4,000 hectares. Just basic farming in the Mallee: wheat, barley, lupins, vetch. Just got into lentils in the last couple of years, so do oat and hay as well. Our ground tends to be a bit lighter north of Hopetoun here, so we've got a lot of ups and downs throughout the paddocks. We don't have flat paddocks here, so the tops of the hills seem to get a little bit bare, and so we're just really trying to look after them. Yeah. In terms of the vulnerable soils on our farm, we tend to find that they're up the top of the rises. Our ground's a lot lighter here north of Hopetoun, so a lot of variability through the paddock, and the tops of the hills are probably where our vulnerable points are. So the biggest problems we tend to have with our vulnerable soils is obviously erosion, and then off the back of that down the bottom of the hill on the flat we're starting to see the mallee seeps, which is what sort of we've dedicated our time towards trying to fix. I guess it's important to us to try and put the time and effort into fixing these spots, because through direct drilling we've been able to produce a lot more off our ground, but the vulnerable soils and the seeps is what's getting worse. Well, I guess what we're seeing over time is the tops of the hills are becoming more vulnerable, and the seeps down the bottom of the hills are getting bigger, and that's why we're trying to combat those with to reverse that, I guess. So the management strategies we tend to work with on the tops of the hills is deep ripping. We've tried to obviously try and bring a little bit of clay up, and also with the straw processor that we invested in a couple of years ago. We were using that purely on the seeps, but this year we've done trials to put that on top of the dune as well, to potentially try and capture the moisture up the top a little bit better. So from our trial work this year with using the straw spreader on the top of the dune, we've been able to capture some fantastic data on losses, on the amount of topsoil that's been able to be captured by that straw or not lost to erosion, which has been fantastic. Definitely with the straw spreading, I think It's got the potential to be widespread over bigger areas. At the moment we're concentrating on the seeps and this year with the top of the dune as well. But I guess it's got the potential, or within time I guess, it's the time constraints that really hold us back with the amount that we're able to do. In terms of the yield returns, I guess we're probably not up to that stage yet in terms of what we've been doing on our seeps. We're definitely getting a better establishment crop-wise, like where before you'd sow through the seep and nothing had come up. We're finding where the straw is sitting on that seep, once we sow through it, it's actually germinating and I guess there would be a little return there, but it's kind of not where we're up to in the journey just yet. We're more looking at just getting them covered up, getting some organic matter back into that seep and try and reduce the size of it. So through our experience with the soak, we're really hoping to replicate that up on top of the dune. They tend not to germinate very good either, so by spreading the straw over it, we're hoping to get a better germination versus the control that's got no straw. So we're really trying to pump up the organic matter, where we use the straw, and we'll really see this year how it goes. To protect the dune, I guess really it's identifying the vulnerable dune as soon as possible. The one that we had with our control site, it was a brown manure and it got overgrazed. So we identified that and we used that as the trial site, I guess. And through our data collection with the trial site, it was really important to be on the dune as soon as you could. So as soon as you identified it as being vulnerable, get the straw spread on it to save that topsoil from blowing away, and then also that protected all the organisms and all that sort of thing through the whole summer, protected that soil for the whole summer, and obviously it gives you the best chance of it breaking down before the next crop. So in terms of the strategy that we're using to cover the seeps is just getting out there, obviously between harvest and cropping whenever we can. This year it's going to be pushed very late due to all the summer spraying that we've had to do. We're hoping to get back out soon and cover them all up again. So I guess, just whenever you can get out there to get it done, as long as you can get it done, it should help. It was the erosion that we didn't want over the summer off the seeps. So the seeps tend to blow as well. So especially if the seeps that had stock on them, you see that the wind blows that real salty ground into the crop, and so there's another metre blowing to the edge of the seep and getting caught in the stubble. So I guess if we can get on there straight away after harvest, get them covered up, purely just to stop that erosion over the summer and stop them getting bigger. Hopefully again draw it back in, use the plants to draw it down. Yeah, I think on the seeps, they tend to dry out and go really hard on top. We sort of talk about them as a reverse dam bank. So it's upside down and it sets that hard, the water can't get out. So we tend to find wherever the straw sits, we pull it back and the dirt is actually moist. And we think it just helps it breathe, so it just doesn't set hard. So we're finding that we're actually probably evaporating more moisture from that soak all summer rather than it just setting hard and trapping that moisture underneath. Over the next 2 to 3, 4, 5 years, we're hoping that by continually spreading the straw on the same areas, on the seeps, on the tops of the hills, they start to reproduce for us and they turn those bits of ground into non-vulnerable areas on our farm. Hopefully the seeps reduce and then we can actually wind back the amount of straw that we have to put out every year, or we can focus on another area as well. So yeah, that's what our big hope is.
Did you know they plan to build over 3,000 wind turbines on Queensland's Great Dividing Range? Over 3,700 kilometres of new haulage roads will carve through old growth forest. Destroying forests for industrial renewables makes no sense. It doesn't have to be this way. The intact biodiverse ranges of Queensland are no place for renewables. Take 2 minutes to learn the truth about the destruction they cause. Go to rainforestreserves.org.au.
This animal is under attack by stable flies, blood-sucking pests that cause major stress to livestock, pets and people. They bite, irritate and disrupt feeding and rest. That means weight loss, poor health and even less milk production in breeding and dairy herds. So what causes an infestation? From late spring through to autumn, Perth's sandy soils, warm weather and organic waste create the perfect breeding ground for stable flies. And here's the catch. After emerging, adult flies quickly move on if there isn't a steady supply of animals for their blood meals. They spread to neighbouring properties. They bite animals and they even bite humans. The good news is that you can stop stable flies before they start and even fix the problem if they've already moved in with simple waste management. Check moist, decaying organic waste. That's where they lay their eggs. The fix is simple. Turn off irrigation, remove organic waste like fruit and veggie waste, grass clippings, manure, waste feed and old hay at least once a week. Bury it at least a metre deep or mulch it and leave it in the sun to dry. If you find larvae, use approved pesticides. Good hygiene and regular cleanups make a big difference. Visit our website for more tips and advice to help you get ahead of the problem. Let's look after our neighbourhood. By tackling stable flies together, we can keep our animals, homes and communities healthy and happy.
And we're back. Anthony Boyle is Executive Director of the Australian Livestock and Rural Transporters Association, ALRTA, which is dedicated to the hard-working road transport companies across Australia. Now, it was established in 1985 and they advocate for the diverse needs and interest of their members, ensuring the safe and sustainable growth of not only the livestock transport sector, but the entire rural transport industry. From livestock to essential goods, their members keep Australia moving. As a proud federation of 6 state associations, their members join through their respective state associations, benefiting from both local and national representation. Together, they work in collaboration to ensure the needs of rural transporters are met across Australia, offering a strong, unified voice for their industry. Anthony, thank you for joining us. You know what? Guess what? We haven't even got your connectors. I'm just, it's been one of those days. I'll just go to a quick spot. I'll come back to you.
So Wild Mountain straddles a ridge that runs up to the McPherson Range, which runs east-west, and that's the New South Wales-Queensland border. We want to move people. We want them to be engaged with the natural world and to realise that there is a place where you can come, where you can get back in touch with nature, be with like-minded people who are interesting and varied, from young and old.
It's really amazing to be here on the ground with incredible organisations like Wild Mountains. They're really the backbones of communities. So we're really proud to be able to support organisations like this to withstand disaster risk that they might face and continue to do the good work that they do into the future.
In 2019, the fires came to within about 12 kilometres, and if we need to evacuate, we have the potential for leaving and turning on a sprinkler system that allows the water to keep going for at least 8 hours to keep the buildings damp and stop ember attack, which I think is wonderful. And I think that RSEQ helping support the community in that, I think is great.
Buy Australian made and you're backing local jobs, a stronger economy, and the way we live right here. Australian made, made right here.
And we're back again. Anthony Boyle, thank you for joining us. It's been one of those days, you know. We tried with you yesterday, and today I think the guides were not kind to us. But thank you for joining us. Since we last spoke, how's the crisis with the fuel affecting the industry?
G'day, Mike, and thanks for your time again. Hopefully you can hear me today. Look, the industry's been fairly resilient. We're a tough lot out in the bush. The biggest problem has been cash flow imposts into the industry because of the fuel prices is going up, where we had... Sorry about that, Mike. Had a lot of people where, you know, if they had a credit limit of $100,000, it bought X amount of fuel a month ago. Now that's buying half as much fuel. So we're finding the industry cash strapped to be able to actually fund itself and operate. So we've been pushing for some measures there, and the government and the banking industry is coming to the party. So that's a good sign.
Tell us about the government loans or their offering.
Look, still a bit of devil in the detail to be released. From what I can gather is they are interest-free loans for a period of up to 3 years, I believe. We're still waiting to find the details on that. And that is purely for businesses that are affected by the fuel price spikes. So trucking is one of those as well in the mix. So, look, you've still got to pay it back. It's a bit like giving to farmers during drought when they were funding the hay to feed their cattle and things like that. We're funding the fuel to go in our trucks. We've still got to pay that money back. So the theory is that we will still become cash positive. Now, if this is the new norm in fuel pricing, it's going to take a long time to stabilise.
The fuel excise that's been removed by the government, is that helping much?
To a degree, it helped for an interim. We're now actually seeing the fuel price continue to rise. So when the 32 cents a litre reduction in the fuel excise came into effect, fuel price around $3.20. They come back to around $2.90 for a tad, and now they jump back up to $3.15 already in the space of a week. So the supply and demand, or the supply issues, are still forcing the price up.
I'm just thinking there are people out there that will lend money. Now, these are businesses. Now, these businesses haven't really accounted for in their budget estimates that they would be paying out more on interest on particular loans. That itself would create enormous stress for those truckies, those businesses, which they are. What can we do to help? Because you don't want a poor bugger going broke finding it exceptionally hard because of something that's out of their control. Is there a way they can claw that back without borrowing to the hilt, which they have already?
Look, the banking industry's probably come up with the best solution so far, and we've seen this through COVID. You have equipment loans for your trucks and your trailers. Now, those loans are generally over a period of 3 to 5 years. Banks are offering a 6-month deferral option on those. So basically you make no repayments for the next 3 months or 6 months, and you extend the contract out by 6 months. So you're effectively moving the end date another 6 months down the line. So that saves the cash coming out of your business, but it still means you've still got a project in your business structure to pay that loan out. It is 6 months later than you originally set out to pay out that finance, but you've still got the ability, you've still got the scope in your operation. Eventually, when some cash returns into your operations, as our rates start coming back up and reflecting, and we get that cash flow coming in from our customers at the higher price to help cover the higher cost of fuel. So that deferral program that the banks are offering is probably one of the best things I've ever seen that actually helps a business.
At what point do you think is breaking point for the industry?
Look, good question. Let's hope we never find out the true answer to that one, actually, Mike. But look, there's a lot of stress at the moment by our members. We're supporting them as well as we can in modelling to ensure that they increase their charges proportionally. So let's hope that they get on top of that. Whatever the new norm comes in, they'll just pick that up. For me, one of the best things that will actually help with them is just a bit of security in fuel supply. At the moment, that stress level of the fuel price moving every day, the unknown of when it's going to stop. So if we can see some security in fuel supply, I think a bit of stability will return, and the mental health of our operators will certainly appreciate that. But at the moment, that constant unknown is certainly imposing very much on their ability to get out of bed every day.
Which of the states that are finding it the toughest?
WA is probably the worst, particularly that wheat belt. It's very tough down there. They've actually still got restrictions at some service stations. Down Ravensthorpe, down towards Esperance Way, we're seeing maximum of 300 litres per fill. That's probably the worst. The rest of the country's not doing too badly. The distributors that are supplying bulk and that to our members as well seem to be keeping up within reason, and that's good. And they've been very good in talking to our members. We're getting a lot of people say how well the distributors are working with them to let them know what's coming. Even they are saying they're concerned at the end of May what might happen then. So let's hope things settle down. It's good to see the Prime Minister going to Singapore. That's what we need in the government's role now. They've done as much as they can with taxation. They've offered loans. We now need them to go and actually find some fuel, mate.
And if farmers, if truckers want to have a chat to someone, it's sometimes nice to get it out of their system. Do you have any advice where they can go? They call you?
Well, they do. And look, we had our recent conference in Queensland, and it was a really good test for them to get together and have a bit of a catch up. So maybe that's actually something we need to do as an industry, is just put on a bit of a barbecue and get everyone together, and let's hope that everyone can see a bit of positivity in the job.
Yeah, certainly hope government can do a better job than they have been doing at the moment, because without your members, this country stops.
Exactly.
But people forget, don't they, that even though you're so important for Australia, you're all individuals, and every individual has its own breaking point. What is the morale like at the moment?
Look, it's no different than the farmers. We're all pretty resilient, and our job is to move the food that they put on the table. So we go hand in hand. They produce it, we move it. At the end of the day, we feed probably most of Southeast Asia, really, when you think about what we do. So, look, they're just turning up. They're going okay, and I think at the moment, while the fuel is tight, they can actually get it. So that's helping.
Yeah, tell me a very important question. Somebody just sent us a note. Have they stopped listening to Lee Kernahan, and are they cranking up Def Leppard or something like that?
You'd be surprised what some truck drivers have listened to, actually, Mike. I think there might be a bit more Metallica than you think out there, just quietly.
Yeah, it's very loud. I have to tell you, my ears, I used to be a rocker from the past, and my hearing has never improved, according to my wife. If somebody was to find out more about what you do or get in contact with you, what's the easiest way, Anthony?
Look, go to our website or our Facebook page. You'll see our contact details there. It's very simple, office@alrta.org.au. Send an email. We are getting lots of emails from our members, and we're trying to reach out individually. Obviously, the phone's busy, but we're doing our best to get back to every one of them as quick as we can. We've got our state associations as well who are spreading the news. And look, if they even just subscribe to our newsletter. That'll give them updates every week, probably every day at the moment. We're giving updates when things come to hand. So if you go to our website and just subscribe to our newsletter, that's a good way of keeping up with the information. That's where our fuel cost calculator is there to help small businesses. We've had about 150 businesses across Australia already implement a fuel surcharge operation that we actually helped them get set up. So yeah, that's 150 businesses that we've been able to directly help manage the cost already.
And how's your stress levels?
Look, mate, I'm not paying the fuel bill, so I'm probably the lucky one. And that's funny you say that. Probably last week was when we first started seeing those first fuel bills start to come through. I think everyone's seen the price of the Bowser, and it was the stress of, yes, actually having to see that bill, that price in front of you, but when the invoice actually turned up, then we actually seen a new level of anxiety.
Yeah, I could well imagine. And they've all got, most of them got wives. You don't have to explain to the bank managers. The wife says, "Oi, where's the rest of this?" I mean, you're paying out too much, but it is very serious.
Yeah, it is. And that's probably where that thing from the banks have come now installed. Instead of paying out repayment straight away for having that deferral option, allows you to use that cash that would have went into repayments for trucks going to cover your fuel. And as the cash flow increases, then things should return. And that's a very good arrangement with the banking industry to support our operators, and yeah, we've got to pay credit to them for stepping up to the plate.
Anthony Boyle, always a pleasure. We'll do this again because we need to make sure that one, the truckers and your members are still working and they can see their way forward. And two, for Australia, we need to make sure that you guys keep working. And as you mentioned, you feed a great chunk of Asia too, so we have to keep our heads down, backsides up, and one step at a time. I think that's what we can do. And let's hope our government can do something good. Maybe that's pushing too much.
They've done probably what they can as far as the taxation side of it. The loans are a good thing. Now we need them to step up and actually get some fuel supply, and hopefully look at long term that we actually start producing a bit more of our own diesel. I think that's what we've got to start pushing hard on next.
Yep. Anthony Boyle, thank you so much. We'll talk again very shortly. This is the Country Telegraph.